All right, so I've been digging through this week's global headlines, and like seriously, if you thought your group chats were dramatic, just wait till you hear what the world leaders were up to.
Right.
It feels less like the news, and more like, well, like a live-action geopolitical reality show. Seriously, more plot twists than your favorite Netflix binge. So today, we're kind of on a mission, right? To cut through all the info overload, we've got stuff from Google News, Mint, BBC, India Today, the Economic Times, UN News, the whole lot. We want to find the most important nuggets, the surprising facts, and let's be honest, the most entertainingly bizarre bits too. Get ready for like a whirlwind of international relations, some high-stakes diplomacy, and some truly cinematic drama starring some very familiar faces.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how seemingly disparate headlines, from grand military parades to shifts in what Gen Z wants from work, how they actually connect. They paint this vibrant, if sometimes chaotic, picture of our rapidly evolving global landscape.
Totally. It's like a massive jigsaw puzzle.
Exactly. It's a complex tapestry, right?
Yeah.
And understanding these threads really helps us grasp the larger narrative and, what it means for you listening.
Absolutely. So let's kick things off with, well, a literal bang. The Beijing blockbuster premiere, Axis of Awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the biggest, most exclusive, and maybe slightly ominous VIP party you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of Hollywood stars, you've got the leaders of China, Russia, and North Korea. It's less Avengers Assemble, more like the Legion of Doom planning their next move.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got shiny new toys on display. Sources like The Times of India, BBC, NDTV, they all detailed China flexing military might during this huge parade in Beijing. Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, they were all there, commemorating 80 years since World War II ended, apparently.
Right.
And Xi hailed an unstoppable China, used the moment to unveil new weapons. Gleaming ones. We're talking missiles, fighter jets, all sorts of military hardware. The Economic Times reported that. It was quite the spectacle.
Uh-huh. And from a broader perspective, this parade, well, it wasn't just about showing off fancy new military hardware. It was more of a statement, a carefully choreographed statement about burgeoning alliances and these rapidly shifting global power dynamics.
Right. Sending a message.
Exactly. It telegraphs strength and unity, especially to the West. It projects this unified front that kind of challenges the existing global order. The critical takeaway here, I think, is that this spectacle aims to solidify a multipolar world where these nations exert greater influence. It's signaling a long-term strategic shift.
Okay, and what about Kim Jong-un's daughter being there? That seemed to catch a lot of attention.
Yeah, that's also intriguing. She was spotted at the event, and Mint and the BBC both noted her attendance. It definitely fueled speculation about her being North Korea's next heir. Her very public presence adds this whole other layer of intrigue to the gathering. It possibly signals long-term intentions, maybe even a generational aspect to these strategic partnerships. So it really forces us to consider how this emerging alignment might reshape international relations, for the next generation.
That is a powerful statement, especially bringing in the next generation like that.
Mm.
Okay, so while Beijing was having its big moment, across the Pacific, someone else was watching, and let's just say not amused. We're talking about Trump's live commentary. You're fired. Up. It's like he's watching the world news and just like live tweeting his unfiltered thoughts.
Yeah.
But with actual global consequences, like that one friend who comments on everything online, but, with nukes maybe involved.
Slightly higher stakes commentary.
Just slightly.
Mm-hmm.
India Today and Mint reported that Trump fumed at conspiracy against U.S., accusing Xi Jinping of conspiring against U.S. with Putin and Kim. He even dramatically labeled it Xi Jinping's anti-American party. I mean,
pretty direct language.
Totally. And just to add a splash of that internet political humor, California Governor Newsom actually mocked Trump with a video featuring Modi, Putin, and Xi, just highlighting the sheer theater of it all.
Well, what's fascinating here isn't just the immediate accusation, is how it reinforces a long-standing narrative, about perceived threats and geopolitical alliances. It's a really clear signal both to allies and adversaries about where the U.S., under that perspective, draws its lines.
So it's consistent with his previous rhetoric.
Very much so. He directly stated, "Give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America." The critical takeaway, really, is that this rhetoric aims to solidify a narrative of external threats, maybe to galvanize domestic support, maybe put international pressure on perceived adversaries.
But it's risky, right?
Oh, absolutely. It carries the risk of further polarizing an already tense global stage and potentially creating a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy of antagonism by cementing these alliances as oppositional.
That's a really sharp point about the double-edged sword there. What's your sense, though, from the sources? Is there any indication that his allies or even adversaries are taking this specific commentary as seriously as his past actions, or is it mostly seen as, for the home crowd?
That's a good question. The sources suggest it's probably a mix. But largely, international actors, they tend to interpret statements like this as strategic signaling, especially given his track record. So while some allies might just roll their eyes and see it as political theater,
Right.
adversaries, especially those he mentioned, likely see it as confirmation of an entrenched anti-U.S. stance, which in turn reinforces their own perceived need for alliances.
So it shapes perceptions, even if it's just talk.
Exactly. And perceptions can be just as impactful as policy itself in international relations.
Fascinating. Okay, shifting gears now to economic tensions. Let's dive into something that usually sounds like it's ripped straight from a, dusty business textbook.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it involves motorbikes. We're talking about the tariff tango, Harley versus hardball. Apparently, a Harley-Davidson motorbike is now the unlikely symbol of international trade disputes.
It's quite the visual.
It really is. It's like a high-stakes game of Monopoly, where one player just keeps buying up properties and jacking up the rent. And the other side, India in this case, is trying to build a new factory just to avoid paying. Google News in India today reported that Trump doubled down on tariffs, justifying 50% tariffs on India by specifically citing Harley-Davidson.
He keeps coming back to that example.
He does. He called U.S.-India trade one-sided and claimed India imposes some of the highest tariffs in the world. And he even confirmed he is not considering lowering tariffs on India imports, according to today's News Online. He's really sticking to his guns here.
Well, what this really reveals about the global landscape is that tariffs are never just about a single product, like a motorbike. They're really tools, right? Tools for economic leverage, market access, and broader geopolitical influence. And they impact everything from supply chains to the prices you pay.
Okay, explain that leverage part a bit more.
So, Trump's claim that Harley-Davidson was forced to build a plant in India just to avoid duties, that's a key part of his narrative. Though India reportedly offered to cut tariffs to nothing, which adds another layer of complexity. It highlights the sort of give and take in these negotiations.
So it's posturing as much as policy.
There's definitely an element of that. The critical takeaway is that these trade battles are fundamentally about a nation's ability to protect its industries and assert its economic power on the world stage. And interestingly, experts cited by Mint suggest that for India, internal reforms are crucial to effectively counter these tariffs and strengthen its domestic economy. Make it less vulnerable,
Right, build resilience from within.
Yeah.
So, okay, on a practical level then, what does this mean for someone listening right now? How do these trade battles actually impact, your purchasing power, the stuff you can buy?
Well, think of it this way. When tariffs get slapped on imports, those goods coming into a country become more expensive. And often, those extra costs are passed right on to you, the consumer.
So my sneakers might cost more.
Exactly. That new gadget, those sneakers, whatever it is, it might become more costly. Beyond that, it can push companies to rethink where they make things. That messes with global supply chains, potentially limiting product availability or just the choices you have.
Okay, got it.
So ultimately, these hardball tactics, they ripple through the global market, and they can directly impact your wallet and what you actually see on store shelves.
That makes it incredibly tangible. Okay, so while everyone else is flexing or fuming, India's over here playing, 4D chess on a tightrope, trying to balance old friends with new pressures. Which brings us nicely to India's geopolitical balancing act, playing chess on a tightrope.
That's a good way to put it.
It feels like India is trying to keep two very demanding friends happy, right? One sells you the cool, exclusive tech, and the other gives you a serious side-eye when you hang out with the first one, all while trying to counter China. It's like a diplomatic dating app situation.
That's one analogy.
So India Today and the Economic Times reported that Russia is in talks to supply more S-400 missile systems to India. These are Russia's most advanced long-range air defense systems. This builds on a, $5.5 billion deal signed back in 2018?
That's right. A significant deal.
And the reporting says this deal was specifically intended to counter China's growing military power. But then, simultaneously, a U.S. intelligence delegation visited India, basically pushing India to reduce Russian oil imports.
About pressure from both sides.
Exactly. And just to stir the pot more, Pakistani PM Shehbaz Sharif weighed in. According to India Today, he respects India-Russia ties but has a demand of his own. The plot definitely thickens.
Well, what's fascinating here is seeing India's complex pursuit of what's called strategic autonomy, meaning its ability to make independent foreign policy decisions, ideally free from external pressures. They're navigating historical alliances, like with Russia, and their immediate security needs, especially concerning China, against this backdrop of shifting global power centers like the U.S. influence. For instance, those final two S-400 units, they're scheduled for 2026 and 2027. That illustrates a long-term defense strategy, highlighting their commitment to self-reliance, despite potential friction.
So they're planning years ahead on this stuff.
Definitely. And remember, India's Russian oil imports had already sparked U.S. tariff talk amidst the Ukraine peace discussions. It really highlights how interconnected these global issues are. The critical takeaway, I'd say, is that in an increasingly polarized world, nations like India are actively trying to diversify their partnerships. They're balancing major powers, Russia, the U.S., to safeguard their own national interests and maintain a degree of independence in their decision-making.
It certainly seems like a really tough tightrope to walk. But are there any examples, even briefly in our sources, of India, successfully navigating this, demonstrating that this strategic autonomy isn't just a hopeful ideal, but maybe a practical reality they've achieved in some areas?
Absolutely. I think the continued procurement of those S-400s from Russia, despite significant U.S. pressure and the looming threat of sanctions, is a prime example. India clearly weighed its immediate defense needs against that diplomatic pressure and chose to proceed. That demonstrates capacity for independent policy on crucial security matters.
Okay, so they stuck to their guns, literally.
Pretty much. And similarly, while being urged to cut back on Russian oil, India strategically maintained imports based on its energy security needs. It indicates a deliberate, self-interested balancing act rather than just succumbing entirely to external demands. So yes, while difficult, strategic autonomy seems to be a practiced reality for India in specific critical sectors.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've navigated the complex world of high-stakes diplomacy and economic chess. But, beyond the grand strategies, the world is also this constant buzz of cultural shifts and human interest, especially as technology reshapes how we live and work. Let's briefly zoom out and catch a couple of those other interesting ripples that caught our attention this week. Because, let's face it, the world is a chaotic, beautiful mess.
And these things are often connected in surprising ways.
Exactly. First up, Gen Z doesn't just want jobs. They want workplaces that don't drain them. That was reported by India Today. It's not just about the paycheck anymore. It's about genuine well-being. Because who wants to work somewhere that feels like, a dementor's kiss on your soul, right? Fair enough. Gen Z get that work-life balance.
It's a significant shift in expectation.
Totally. Then something a bit more tech-focused and kind of sobering. OpenAI to add parental controls to ChatGPT after teen suicide. That's from Mint. Turns out even our rapidly advancing AI might need a bedtime and a no talking to strangers rule sometimes.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a reminder that cutting-edge tech, while incredible, also brings these new, heavy ethical responsibilities.
And what's brought into sharp focus by these stories, I think, is how quickly global societal values and technological advancements are intercepting with our daily lives. The Gen Z workplace demands, for example, reflect this growing global consciousness around mental health and work-life integration. It feels like a direct response to maybe past generations' burnout.
Learning from history, perhaps?
Perhaps. Meanwhile, the need for parental controls on ChatGPT highlights the rapid, often unforeseen, ethical challenges that come bundled with powerful new technologies. The critical takeaway here is that even amidst all the geopolitical grandstanding we've discussed, these societal and technological shifts are fundamentally reshaping how we live, communicate, and even define our well-being. They influence individual lives on a massive scale.
So, okay, wrapping this all up, what does it all mean? We've zipped from Beijing's grand military displays to Trump's tariff tantrums, India's tightrope walk, thrown in a couple of key societal shifts for good measure. It's a lot, right?
Oh, it is a lot. The news cycle truly never sleeps.
Never. And every day just brings new layers to this global story.
And the macro implications are pretty clear, I think. Global dynamics are more fluid, more influenced by both calculated strategy and individual personalities than ever before. It really demands constant vigilance and critical thought from all of us.
So paying attention is key.
Absolutely. These seemingly disparate events, from national parades to workplace culture, they're all threads in the same evolving narrative. And they're shaping the world in profound ways. Understanding the motivations behind these headlines and how they connect is really paramount.
So as you navigate your own daily news feeds, maybe consider this. How much of what you're seeing is a strategic play? How much is pure personality-driven drama? And how much is a fundamental societal shift unfolding right before your eyes? And critically, how does it all ultimately shape the world you live in, far beyond just the headlines?